My name is Keiko Tanaka. I am 78 years old. I have lived in the same wooden house in Kanazawa for over 50 years. My floors have only ever known oil, a broom, a cloth, and wax once a year. They have never needed anything more, and they are more beautiful today than when they were first laid. One method, no machines, and floors that grow more beautiful with time. Think of what urethane does to a floor. It sits on top of the wood like a skin of plastic. You can see a shine, you can feel a smoothness. But what you are touching is the coating itself. You are not touching wood at all. Underneath that film, the wood remains a living material. Solid wood has a quality that people rarely think about. It absorbs moisture from the air when the summer turns heavy and humid, and it releases that moisture back when winter dries the house out. This is not something the wood tries to do. It simply does it, the way your lungs take in air. It is the nature of the material. There is another way to protect a floor, one that works with the wood instead of trapping it. Oil does not sit on top of wood. It goes into it, down into the grain, into the fibers themselves, becoming part of the material rather than a layer above it. When you apply oil to a bare floor, the wood draws it in the way dry earth draws in rain. What remains is not a film, it is wood that has been fed. This is what I learned from the women who came before me. My grandmother oiled her floors. Her mother oiled hers. They did not know the chemistry of it, but they understood the result. The wood stayed strong. It resisted water because the oil penetrates into the wood itself rather than forming a film on the surface. Moisture and stains do not take hold easily. The natural texture and feel of the wood is preserved while still being protected from within. And yet you could still feel the wood itself under your bare feet. Every ridge of the grain, every slight undulation where one board met the next. The texture was alive because nothing covered it. This is the part that matters most to me. A urethane floor feels like urethane. An oiled floor feels like wood. Your feet know the difference the moment they touch it. I wake each morning and walk from my bedroom to the kitchen on boards that are warm in summer and cool in winter, and I feel the grain press gently against my soles the way it has for 50 years. The surface has a softness to it that comes from age and oil together, a depth that I cannot describe except to say it feels like something that has been cared for rather than covered up. And because there is no film sealing the surface shut, my floors still do what wood was made to do. In the humid months of summer here in Kanazawa, when the air hangs heavy with moisture, the boards absorb what the air offers. In the dry cold of winter, they release it back. The wood breathes in its own rhythm, in and out with the seasons, exactly as it would if it stood as a living tree. The oil within the fibers does not interfere with this exchange. It protects from within while leaving the surface open. 50 years I have watched these boards. They are darker now than when they were new. Richer, the color has deepened the way a leather strap deepens on a wrist over years of wear. They glow in the morning light from my east window, and the glow comes from within the wood, from the grain itself, because there is no artificial shine sitting above it. This is what oil gives a floor, protection that lives inside the wood, and a surface that only grows more beautiful with time. But beauty asks something of you in return. Every grain of sand that finds its way onto a wooden floor is waiting to be stepped on. And when it is, it does not simply sit there. Your foot presses it down and drags it forward, and that tiny particle cuts into the oil finish the way fine sandpaper would. One grain does very little, but a week of footsteps over a floor scattered with grit, with dust tracked in from the garden, with the fine powder that settles from the air itself, and the surface begins to wear in ways you cannot yet see. This is what I learned slowly over many years. The damage that sends people searching for heavy machines and expensive restoration does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates, one particle at a time, one footstep at a time, ground into the finish until the protection wears thin in the paths you walk most. A broom prevents this. I sweep my floors each morning. It is the first thing I do after opening the windows. A soft broom, the kind with natural bristles that bend rather than scratch. I begin at the far wall of the main room and work toward the entrance where the dust collects against the threshold. The whole house takes a few quiet minutes. I am not in a hurry. The broom moves slowly, gathering what the night air carried in, what yesterday's feet left behind. It is such a small thing. A few minutes with a broom before the kettle boils. And yet this single habit is what stands between a floor that ages gracefully and one that wears itself down under its own traffic. Every grain I sweep away is one that will never be pressed into the finish. Every morning I do this. The oil beneath my feet stays intact a little longer. The protection remains whole. People wait until a floor looks tired, then believe the floor needs restoration. What the floor needed was a broom months or years before anyone thought to look down. The broom is the foundation, but there is a second rhythm, slower and deeper, that these floors ask of you. Every 1 to 3 months, I take a cloth from the kitchen drawer, cotton, soft from years of washing, large enough to fold twice. I wet it under the tap, and then I wring it. This is where everything matters. I wring it until my hands ache, and then I wring it once more. The cloth should feel barely damp to the touch. If you can press it against your palm and feel wetness, it is too wet. Wring it again. Water is not a friend to wood. A little moisture in a well-wrung cloth lifts what a broom cannot reach. The fine film that settles from cooking, from skin, from the oils of daily life. It dissolves gently under a damp cloth and comes away. But too much water sits in the grain and swells the fibers. It undoes what the oil has done. So the wringing is the whole skill. Everything else is just patience. I kneel at one end of the room and draw the cloth along the boards in long, slow passes, following the direction of the grain. I do not press hard. The weight of my hand is enough. Board by board, the floor comes back to itself. What looked slightly dulled brightens again under the cloth, the way a stone brightens when you pass it through a stream. When I find something stuck, a spot where something dried and held, I let the damp cloth rest on it for a moment. Then I wipe again, gently, and it lifts. There is no need for soap or any cleaning solution. Patience and moisture do the work. Then I turn my attention to the joints. Where one board meets the next, a narrow line collects what the cloth cannot reach. Dust settles there. Tiny crumbs of daily life find their way into those gaps. For this I keep a toothpick in my apron pocket. I run it along the joints slowly, drawing out what has gathered. The toothpick pulls it free without forcing water into the gap, without any chemical that might dry or damage the wood at its edges. This is intimate work. You learn your floor this way. You notice where it wears first, where the grain opens slightly with the seasons, where 50 years of footsteps have worn a gentle path, and once a year, when autumn comes, those well-worn paths ask for something more. The oil I applied when these boards were new does not last forever. In the places where my feet pass most, the hallway from bedroom to kitchen, the stretch beside the counter where I stand to prepare meals, the path to the front door. Daily use wears the protection away slowly, taking the water repellency and the oil content with it, until the wood in those lines feels different under my feet, drier, slightly rough where it was once smooth. The grain lifts just enough that I can feel it when I pay attention. This is what tells me the floor is ready. I wax my floors once a year, and I do it in autumn. The air is dry enough for the wax to cure well, and the house is cool enough that I am comfortable kneeling for an afternoon. I say afternoon, but it is not a long one. The work itself is quiet and unhurried. I put on an old apron, open the windows for air, and begin. I do not wax the entire floor. This is important. Only the paths where feet have worn the finish thin need attention. The boards beneath the bookshelf, the corners behind the door, the stretch of floor under the low table where no one walks, these are still well protected from the last time, perhaps the time before that. Wax goes only where it is needed. Anything more is waste, and waste has always made me uncomfortable in a way I cannot quite explain. I apply the wax in thin, even passes with a soft cloth, following the grain as I always do when I touch these boards. A small amount goes a long way. I work it into the wood the way I would work cream into tired hands. The boards accept it differently in different places. Where the wear was greatest, the wood drinks it in quickly. Where the finish was still whole, it sits on top and must be buffed away. When I am finished, I leave the windows open and let the floor rest. By evening the wax has settled. The paths that felt dry that morning feel whole again, fed, ready for another year of bare feet and morning light. This is the complete method. A broom each morning, a well-wrung cloth every few months, wax once a year where feet have worn the protection thin. 3 rhythms, each one simple, none of them requiring a machine or a professional or a phone call to schedule. And yet most people have never been taught any of them. There will come a morning when you look down and see it, A scuff across the hallway boards, a dullness in the finish where the light used to catch, perhaps a fine network of shallow scratches near the door where boots have been careless. And the first thought, the one the industry has put in your head over decades of repetition, is that the floor must be sanded back to bare wood and started over from nothing. I want to tell you something that took me many years to understand. That thought is almost never true. Look at what you are actually seeing. If the wood itself is whole, if there are no deep gouges that catch your fingernail, if the damage lives only in the finish and not in the grain beneath it, then what you have is a surface that simply needs refreshing. The wood is fine. It has been fine this whole time. It is only the thin layer of protection above it that has grown tired. Here is what I do when my floors reach this point. I clean the area with a pH-neutral cleaner, something gentle enough that it leaves no residue and does nothing to harm what remains of the finish. Then I take a 120 grit abrasive pad and lightly screen the existing surface. I am not removing it. I am giving it just enough texture that a fresh coat of oil or wax can grip and bond to what is already there. Then I apply that fresh coat, and the floor is whole again. The wood loses nothing in this process. It keeps every year it has earned. Now think about what a drum sander does. It is a heavy machine built to strip a floor to bare wood in passes. It removes material aggressively, for old floors, for thin floors, for boards that have already lived through decades. This machine takes away what cannot be given back. Each pass costs the wood a layer of itself. The grain that darkened over years of morning light, gone. The depth that oil built slowly from within, gone. You are left with raw pale wood that must begin its whole journey again. There are gentler tools. An orbital sander moves in small circles rather than tearing forward in a line, and it takes far less material with each pass. For the rare case where damage truly has reached the wood itself, an orbital sander preserves what a drum sander destroys. But even that is a last resort. For surface wear, for the ordinary tiredness that time brings to any finish, the screening method gives back everything the floor needs without sacrificing anything the floor has become. I think of my own boards and what they hold in their grain. 50 years of oil absorbed slowly, season by season, the warmth that comes from age alone. I would not feed that to a machine for the sake of a few scuffs that a fresh coat could heal. And this is where something begins to come clear about why so few people know these things. I am not telling you a man schemed this in a back room. Nobody had to. It is worse than a conspiracy because it is a system nobody needed to coordinate. It simply pays better to sell a full refinishing job than to teach someone 3 simple habits that prevent it. My grandmother never entered this cycle. She could not have, even if she wanted to, because she never sealed her floor with a film in the first place. There was nothing to crack, nothing to sand away, nothing to reapply. She oiled her boards, she swept them, she wiped them with a damp cloth, and knelt once a year with a pot of wax. Her floors asked for nothing else. They gave back warmth and beauty for decades because she gave them 10 minutes of attention on an ordinary morning. It was not a secret. It was simply how everyone cared for wood in her time. The knowledge did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it could not be sold. So what does a floor look like after a whole lifetime of this kind of patience? I will tell you what I see when the morning light comes through my east window and falls across the hallway boards. The wood is darker now than it was 50 years ago. Not stained dark, not painted or dyed. It deepened on its own, the way a river stone darkens over years of water passing over it. The color lives inside the grain. It came from decades of oil absorbed slowly, from the warmth of bare feet passing the same path 10,000 mornings, from sunlight that touched the same boards every day and left a little of itself behind each time. There is a glow to these floors that I cannot reproduce and would not want to. It comes from within the wood itself, not from any shine sitting above it. New wood does not have this. New wood is pale and even and waiting. It has not yet been asked to hold anything. My floors hold 50 years of living. They hold the path I walk to make tea. They hold the place where my daughter sat as a girl with her books spread around her. They hold the slight hollow near the kitchen threshold where I have stood every evening of my adult life. These marks are not damage. In Japanese we have a word, wabi-sabi, and it means something close to this. The beauty that comes only from age and imperfection. The quiet dignity of a thing that has been used fully and cared for gently and allowed to become what time wanted it to become. A floor without any mark of life upon it is only a floor that carries the soft wear of decades, the paths worn just slightly deeper than the rest, the grain darkened unevenly where light fell and where shadow held. This is something more. It is a record. It is proof that someone lived here and loved this place enough to tend it. My floors were not preserved, despite the years. They became what they are because of them. Every autumn of wax, every morning of the broom, every pass of the damp cloth gave the wood permission to age honestly rather than hide beneath a mask. And this, I think, is what I most want you to understand. I would like to ask you something. If you knelt down right now and touched your floor, what would you feel? The wood itself or the coating above it? Tell me in the comments. I am curious what lives beneath your feet. Next week, I want to talk about wooden furniture, the tables and shelves and chairs that share your home with these floors. They ask for the same kind of patience. It is the natural next step after today. Buddha, sleep each morning. Wipe with a well-wrung cloth every few months. Wax once a year where your feet have worn the finish thin. The people who built these homes with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.